This lecture is titled Mastering MyFitnessPal, in which we're going to look at the most popular tracking app in the world, MyFitnessPal, how to use it accurately and efficiently, how to accurately measure and weigh all the food and liquids that we consume, and how to accurately weigh and measure our bodies. Then we're going to go and look at techniques on how to have a successful calorie deficit and how to successfully lose weight in the long term by being accurate with our reporting of what we consume. For this course, you're going to need digital food scales and a measuring cup or jug. So obviously the food scales are for weighing any solid food that you consume, although most things, if they come in packaging, will have a barcode and you can scan the barcode, which we'll talk a bit about later. Everything else, all liquids, will be measured. It's really important to measure absolutely everything we put in our body that contains calories or nutrients so we can keep track of it. It's hard enough to figure out why we might not be losing weight if we're not tracking, because it's not an exact science. But if we do track and gather data, it can give us a much better idea of why that might not be happening if we're not headed in the right direction. When eating out or buying foods that don't have packaging labels, you can either weigh the food, or if you're eating out, opt for an option that is most similar to that option from a ready meal, and always overestimate rather than underestimate, because it's much more likely that what you're eating out is going to be higher in calories than you expect. So it's important to get a baseline understanding of what we mean by weighing and measuring food, and what is good practice and what isn't so good practice. So we all understand that we're singing off the same hymn sheet, and we understand what we're trying to achieve here. So first and most common is guessing or judging the weight of food by eye. This is a really bad habit to get into if you're trying to track. I think if you're tracking, you should be tracking accurately, and if you're not tracking, then you can do things by eye. But if we're tracking, we're looking to be accurate, so we're going to weigh everything that we consume. Not recording the liquids that contain calories, so any sugary drinks, any milk, any orange juice, those kind of things, they all contain calories, have to be recorded. Do this by scanning the barcode and measuring it, or just measuring it and searching for any generic orange juice, milk, whatever you're drinking in the MyFitnessPal app. Probably most common to that is any oils, butter, margarine, whatever you use to cook your food. Not recording that. So if you're going to use olive oil, then I would suggest measuring it. If you're going to use butter, then weigh it. My personal preference is the 1 cal spray. I think this is really useful, as actually cooking oil probably isn't the best way to be getting your calories in for the most part. I much prefer a 1 cal spray, especially if you're in a calorie deficit. And it's actually really easy to track the calories in this, obviously, because 1 spray, 1 calorie. So if you consume, let's say, a packet of ham, it's 100 grams, and you go by the packaging, but actually when you weigh it out, it's not exactly 100 grams, because that's an average. So if you weigh it out, it actually comes out to 90 grams, then that's what you record the weight as. Now, this is a much more higher level of accuracy, but it's certainly worth considering putting into your processes if you want to be accurate. Certainly it's better to be accurate more than you need to in the first instance, until you learn about what is and isn't so important when tracking. So mistakes when measuring on your scales. So this could be just an error in measuring the packaging as well. So like one technique you could do is you could put whatever you're trying to measure on the scale in the packaging, take it out, and then use the negative number as what the weight is of the item. My advice would be to put it in MyFitnessPal as you go, as if, especially if you're making a big meal, it can be really easy to forget as well once you've taken this measurement exactly what it was when you put it into MyFitnessPal. Another common mistake is definitely whether the weight of the item you cooked was raw or not raw. So cardinal rule would be always weigh the food raw, because there's no variance in the raw weight, but there's a huge variance in the cooked weight. Once the water's evaporated, an example of the chicken or beef, or once the carbohydrate has absorbed the water, the weight changes a great deal. So for rice, it could be 4 times as heavy once it's absorbed the weight. For chicken, it could be 50% as heavy once it's cooked, if you get a very watery chicken breast, for example. But the idea is they're not accurate. So make sure you weigh the items raw, always raw, and make sure that the item that you're recording in MyFitnessPal is also the raw weight. So if you scan the barcode of your rice, it comes up trophy rice, for example, tilde rice, then that would be the raw weight of the rice. Where you have to be careful is if you're searching for generic rice, for example, that rice corresponds to the raw weight of whatever rice is, whatever type of rice you're trying to weigh. So we're going to talk about how to accurately weigh and measure your body. So you will need a digital body scale for this. On the far right hand side, you'll see a sort of analog dialed scale. These are quite useless because they're not accurate to the nearest 100 grams. So you really need a digital scale, or I would say it's almost not worth using. It really isn't, because it would just skew your idea of what your body weight actually is. So definitely need a digital scale. Also, really useful tool worth having is the anatomical tape measure. It's very much more accurate than a fabric tape measure, and you can kind of standardize it, because as you see, the edge there hooks into the machine, so you can't really tamper with the natural length. You're just going to tighten it up to the skin and take measurements. The reason why I use a tape measure is I use a US Navy body fat formula, which is quite a reasonably accurate measurement of body fat percentage, which kind of corresponds to most handheld devices or anything you can really get hold of these days. But actually, it's a much more simple way of taking that measurement. Whilst there might be some variance in the outcome it gives you in the body fat percentage, what we're really interested in is the track change over time. For men, you'd measure your neck around the lowest point and the waist around the navel. For women, you take 3 measurements, not 2, so you would measure still the neck. Waist would be around the narrowest point though, not around the navel, and hips would be measured around the widest point. These measurements will be in centimeters, go into a calculator, and then it will give you a body fat percentage. Whilst this is also good, assuming for men your neck stays the same, your waist gets smaller, you're likely going to be losing body fat. And for women, the same principle applies. Let's say your hips and neck stay the same, your waist gets smaller. Again, you'll likely be losing body fat. Okay, so the way you weigh yourself is you're always going to do it upon waking. So not necessarily in the morning, whenever you wake up. So if you're doing shift work, you do it when you're upon waking. Make sure you're nude, so standardize it. If you're wearing clothes, you can't really account for the variance in clothes. Make sure you do it before you eat or drink anything, but always after using the toilet. So that doesn't mean hanging around for half an hour or an hour to use the toilet just so you get a lighter weigh in. If you need to go to the toilet when you wake up, I know some people do, some people don't. Go to the toilet, then weigh yourself, okay? And do this ideally as a minimum 4 times per week. If it's any less, the variance will be too high in the weekly average. We weigh ourselves this frequently for a weekly average. If you only weigh yourself once a week, this can be a huge problem. You can weigh yourself on Monday and then the following Monday and weigh the same, but you could have actually lost quite a significant amount of weight and you wouldn't know. Because of variances in weight caused by water, glycogen, food weight, etc., we need to take the weekly averages and compare the weekly averages, and that's what we'll do. If you see the spreadsheet that I will send you, you'll see that we track the weekly average. You're also going to measure your measurements from I mentioned before, but you're going to take it once per week and do it at the same time that you weigh in. So generally I like to take this measurement on a Sunday in the morning, as generally it's the day that most people don't work. But you could take it on one day on one of your days off when you've got a bit more time to think about these kind of things. Hopefully you'll be weighing yourself anyway. If you're doing it 4 times a week, just pick one of the days at the end of the last day you're going to weigh in that week, and take your measurements and put them into the spreadsheet. So tracking food intake has actually become very, very easy with the advent of smartphones and applications. MyFitnessPal is probably the oldest and most popular, and it's the one that I'm most comfortable coaching people to use. So I really recommend that you use it, although I'm not going to force you to use it. If you already are familiar with something else like NutriCheck, then carry on with that. Just be aware that a lot of the coaching I'm going to do is going to be with this app. So that's what we're going to be doing. But if you want to use your own to input your own data from that, then that's absolutely fine. Personally, I find MyFitnessPal very basic and simple, which is really good. So you can download it to your smartphone. I really don't know if you can use it on a desktop. I've only used it on a smartphone, so I would go with that. It's free to use, and it's really easy to use as well. They do offer a premium option for more accurate macro tracking, but to be honest, this is not really worth the money that you have to pay for it. The free to use version that you just get from downloading the app is absolutely fine, and I wouldn't ever really recommend paying for this app for the premium version. It's just not worth it. Allows you to save meals and recipes, so every time you make a meal you can save the meal and all the ingredients. So if you make the same meal very regularly, or you prep your meals at the start of the week, you can just recall the meal, where you don't have to recall 7 to 8, 9, 10 ingredients. You just recall the meal from a list that you would have saved previously, which I'll talk to you about later on in this presentation. It logs and records your data for months, so if you ever need to go back and check, so if you are putting your calories, carb, protein, fat into the tracker spreadsheet that I'll send you, you can just do it every Sunday night, and you can go back to the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and put in all your data, and it will be there as accurate as you recorded it the first time. Not necessarily saying this is the best way to record it all at the end of the week. Sometimes, especially when you're getting started, it's better to get in the habit of recording into the spreadsheet at the end of every day, so you can actually reflect on what you ate that day and what your carbs and protein and fat were, because you might be cognizant of the calories consumption. You're like, okay, cool, nailed calories today, but you didn't really pay much attention to your protein target. So it can actually be quite good to record at the end of each day and transfer it to the spreadsheet, just to reflect on what you did that day and then what you might need to do to improve on the following days in that week. So as I kind of touched on there, it does offer you an accurate picture of your calorie, macronutrient, fiber and micronutrient intake, more so for calories and macros, and less so for the other two. But to be honest, you'll mostly be focusing on the first two for the course of this course. So in this slide, I'm going to talk a bit more about the limitations of MyFitnessPal. So whilst it can be really good for recording food intake and recalling it, and also setting your calorie limit, or if you're going to get the premium version, also your individual macro goals, which isn't too important because you can actually set percentages based on your calorie limit. But the percentages are in increments of 5%, whereas if you pay for the premium, you could do it in increments of 1% or exact grams. So as you can see, it's not a huge difference. So generally I go for what's most close to my macro target, but we're not going to be too concerned about that. We're mostly concerned about calories, okay? So you can set your calorie limit and then focus on your goal, and it will tell you when you've gone over or how much you're under for the day. So it's quite easy to sort of flash up and just see what you've got left. Okay, so these are the limitations of MyFitnessPal. It recommends what you need for weight loss. So if you put in a target weight that you want to get to in a few weeks, it will then adjust your calorie intake based on what it thinks your maintenance calories are. Okay, this is totally inaccurate. It's not based off anything other than averages, and we're all different from the average. So for some people it might be accurate. Of course it's going to be accurate for some people, but for most people it won't be. So what we do instead, which is way more accurate, is record the weight change over time, cross-reference it with the calories you consume for that period of time. Usually 2 weeks is enough, and then we figure out the maintenance calories from that. So if you gain weight over that period, then you were in a surplus, and it depends on how much weight you gained, will be how much surplus you gained. You know exactly what calories you consume, so you can figure it out. Vice versa, if you were in a calorie deficit, okay? Also, so it recommends you calorie consumption, so you want to ignore that. Don't put in any goals into MyFitnessPal. Your goals will be agreed with your nutrition coach, okay? So if you tracked before, it might be very straight up and easy. You just put in your target straight away. If not, then it'll be a case of recording for the first couple of weeks, getting used to recording, and then after that you'll have a clear goal based on what you want to achieve, okay? There's also a step counter in it and a way that you can add in exercise. I really don't recommend using either of these options because all it will do is allow you more calories to consume for the day or make you feel like you should. I personally don't coach through adjustment of calories for energy expenditure throughout the day, unless you're planning on training for a marathon anytime soon, where your energy expenditure for the day is going to change drastically. Your maintenance calories will be more or less the same, okay? If you're coming from a background of like a more sedentary background, you're taking up CrossFit and you're starting to do it regularly, then yes, it's likely your maintenance calories could change over the course of time, but for the most part, they're not going to change that much, okay? And we can adjust as we go. But for the most part, they will not change, okay? Exercise is a very, very small percentage of the calories we burn throughout the day. What actually burns more is the basal metabolic rate, the thermic effect of food from the protein we eat, and the non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And actually exercise activity thermogenesis burns the least. So we're not going to adjust for exercise for the course of this nutrition course. So here's the first method. The most simple one and most common one that I would use is the barcode scanner and input the quantity for recording. So you're going to click on add food for whatever meal it is that day, breakfast, lunch or dinner. I generally don't use the snacks option. I just make sure I get everything in. If you use the snacks option, it kind of hides down there at the bottom. You sort of forget about it. Okay, so if you portion it off into time of day, so if breakfast is say 7 till 12, and then lunch is whatever you eat between 12 and 5, and then dinner is whatever you eat between 5 and then before you go to bed, for a normal shift pattern kind of working day. And I would probably avoid using the snacks column, and just so you can see when you're eating your meals and you don't forget about anything. Okay, so what do we do? Click add food. Then if you see the scan barcode in the top right, written in blue writing, if you click that, then the blue square with the corners will pop up. You just hover that over the barcode. It's really, really good. You just hover it over, then it will search, and then it will hopefully find the item that you're scanning, okay? But I did actually scan a bottle of sauce the other day, and it was a chow mein sauce. It came out as a ranch dressing, which was way higher in calories. Okay, so make sure you interrogate what it's coming out with. Sometimes it doesn't have it. If it doesn't, then search and find for a close substitute using the search for a food option. Okay, once you've done it and once you've found in this case it's pumpkin seeds from Sainsbury's, found the pumpkin seeds, I'm going to weigh the pumpkin seeds. At the moment the serving suggestion is 10 grams. Let's say I want 17. I weighed 17 and then I put them on because I wanted to fit my macros, or just felt like that was a suitable portion for that meal. I can either put 1.7 and keep the serving size as 10 grams, so that would be 17, or I can change the serving size to 1 gram and then change the number of servings to 17. So either way, it's still going to give me the right calculation. If you're not used to kind of working with numbers in this way, with decimal places and stuff, then always stick with the lowest denominator. So like just stick with 1 gram and put the number of servings in quite simply, and you can't go far wrong. Okay, the next method we're going to look at is if you search for the food, because it, and for the most part, doesn't have a barcode, or in that other case I showed you is that you scanned it but it came out as a random food. In the case of scanning the chow mein sauce, and you get a ranch dressing. Okay, then you go and search. For the most part, it's going to be fruit, I would imagine you'd be searching for. So I've used a banana here. So you got a banana. This is the danger, right? So I got an option here. I can choose a medium banana. How do I know my banana's medium? You got to weigh it, okay? So don't choose medium. So go serving size, 1 gram. So take it down to the base, the lowest number you can get, and then weigh the banana. This banana weighs 60 grams. Then we're gonna put it in, and if you look on the far right column, you can see the banana is now saved in the breakfast, and the calories are there as well. So that's what it looks like. Very, very simple, very simple. Okay, so saving meals and then recalling them. So first of all, we need to save a meal before we can recall it. I'm going to talk you through one of my favorite meals, overnight oats, which I prepare. I don't prepare many meals, but this is one of them. Okay, so it's in the breakfast column there. This is the batch I made. I'm going to go down where it says add food. On the right hand side there's 3 dots. I'm going to click that. Then if we move over, you can see it says save as meal. So we're going to put save as meal, and the next screen comes up. Name your meal, overnight oats. Click done, and then save. Then I'll show you on the next slide how to recall this in the future. Okay, so you prepared a few of these meals. For me, I prepare a few at a time. So I want to save it. I've saved it from yesterday. I want to recall it now. It's tomorrow. It's breakfast time. I'm going to go across, click the 3 dots again like we did before. This time I'm going to go over to meals, and then I'm going to scan down. I've got overnight oats there. I'm going to click on the overnight oats. Then it comes up. I can check that it's the right recipe that I wanted. Look down at the ingredients again, and all I have to do is click the tick in the top right hand corner, and then it will come up in that day with all of those ingredients that I saved in that meal. A little tip is if you prepare meals often that are quite similar but different in certain ways, like the ingredients are slightly different, they vary, then what you should do is add the date that you made that batch in, so you don't get confused as you go forward and start recording for weeks and weeks and you don't know which recipe you're necessarily going for. But when you got the date, you know, and you can be accurate. So once you've been given your calorie goal by your CFP nutrition coach and your protein goal, you're going to go into MyFitnessPal, and in the bottom right hand corner where the 3 dots are, you're going to click more. Then you're going to go to goals, which is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 option down with the little bullseye. You're going to click goals, and this is where it gives you that option to put in your starting weight and current weight and goal weight. Avoid that. Don't put anything in, because it will just adjust your goal, and never put anything in there, because if you have your goal, it will change it basically. What you want to do is go 1 down from there where it says nutrition goals, calorie, carb, protein and fat goals. You're going to click on that, and the next picture will show up. You're going to put in your calories, and then you're going to adjust your percentage protein to what it needs to be to get you to your minimum amount of protein. Then you can adjust your carbs and fats to what it might ideally be, but as we'll come on to in the later lectures, we'll understand that actually calories and proteins is the most important thing. And then carbs and fat can be important, but if we're not in a super restrictive state, if we're not trying to be a competitive bodybuilder or an elite CrossFitter, we don't need to worry too much about this balance, as long as we're not restricting one far too much than the other. So we're not trying to do keto, not trying to do any low fat. It's just a balance of the both, and as long as we're not fully restricting either one for a long period of time, we're in a good place. Okay, so a common theme that we'll see throughout the course is a flexible approach to dieting. Dietings don't have to be overly restrictive, and you can pretty much choose how restrictive you want to be, and I'll kind of give you an idea of how likely you are to succeed based on what you want to choose and what might be a better option for you. So you can definitely have a too low of a goal of a calorie deficit, like 100 or 200 calories is probably not going to get you where you want, and I'll talk about that in detail when we have a sort of one-to-one discussion on that, or in the group chat on Zoom. And you can definitely go and try and cut calories far too quickly as well. There's definitely a sweet spot with that, but we maintain a flexible approach in which you can decide what food is best for you. I'm going to give you the target, and then as we go through the lectures, you'll kind of become more educated on how you can best decide what food is best for you. So you might have an idea of what you think is best for you now. You're going to have a natural learning process through tracking and seeing what actually works quite well. And at the end of each day, if you feel very hungry, you're going to have a look at what you ate that day, try to figure out why you think that is. And this is definitely something we can discuss in our chats. And on the better days, you can have a look as well at why you think it might have gone a bit better, where you felt satiated. You might have been more active that day. You might have been out more. Might have been less food focused. Might have had a good day. Might have drank a lot more water. Might have been to the gym. Might have slept really well the night before. You might be less stressed. It might be a day off. It could be so many things. But it's certainly good to take a flexible approach. When you're deciding what food might be best for you, you need to consider the opportunity cost of food. So, is it feasible to have chocolate every day in a caloric deficit? Absolutely. By how much? Well, that depends on. This is a really, really anecdotal example, but a lot of people like hedonic foods in their diet. So we're going to consider one example of chocolate here. Yes, totally possible, but there is an opportunity cost. You have the chocolate, you can't have something in its place, and that could be a meal, could be part of a meal. But is it better to feed a small craving on a daily basis rather than let it build up? Totally. And that's why we don't restrict any foods. So it's not, there's no food off limits. Some foods are going to fill you up far more than others because they're high in fiber and they're high in volume, and they secrete hormones that make you feel full, and these will work. But we're humans, we're drawn to calorie dense foods, and if we avoid them for too long, then it will build up and result in a lot of psychological stress and potentially binging. So it's certainly good to have a flexible approach in which you can have and fit hedonic foods into your diet on a daily basis. So this is why we don't restrict any foods from the diet, absolutely not. But it's about having an education on what can make your life the easiest, certainly when in a caloric deficit, which is when it's harder and food is more scarce, we have to make better decisions. How we do this as well in terms of our targets is you're allowed plus or minus 10% from day to day. So consider an example of a calorie target of 2,000 calories per day, and your daily calorie range would be 1,800 to 2,200 calories. So on any given day, as long as you're sticking that calorie range, you're good to go. But at the end of the week, you need to be within 5% of your target for your weekly average. So if you have a day where you go 2,200, then you can either average that out over the rest of the week, or you can have an 1,800 calorie day when you're, say, less active. So if you have a more active day, then you could plan to have a higher calorie day if that suits you, or if you prefer to have higher calorie days on your rest days, then that's absolutely fine too. But the main point is at the end of the week, you have to be within 5% of your target. 5% would be between 1,900 and 2,100 calories. This is to discourage rapid weight loss. I don't want you to go below that, because this will already be a fine enough target for you to lose weight. If you want to lose weight quicker, then that requires a conversation about why you want to do that and why that might be a good idea or a bad idea, and if you can stick to it and for how long. But once we made the target, you stick to the target, and you want to fit in to that 5% range. Okay. So for this week, you'll have 2 tasks. The first one will just be to follow the advice given in the PowerPoint. Start to track. So we had a food diary last week. This week we're going to track with MyFitnessPal and get used to using that. It'll be less intense than last week because you will have the app to assist you and guide you. For your submission by Saturday, I need you to prepare a summary on how you increase your satiety with the same caloric intake. So you had to make some kind of decisions and decide what was better for you. What decisions were they? How did you find it worked for you to be able to feel full, feel satisfied from the food that you're eating? And how did you achieve your protein target? So you should have a protein target straight away. We don't necessarily know your calorie target, but we know a protein target as it's based on your body weight. So how did you achieve it? If you didn't achieve it and you're falling short, then what techniques could you use to increase it? Or is it a case of having a conversation with your nutrition coach and coming to an agreement on what might be a more realistic protein target for you based on certain dietary requirements? For example, veganism makes it very difficult to consume enough protein in the day. Also, just as you're going through the week, make a mental note of techniques that you've used to accurately weigh and measure your food for discussion on Sunday. I've mentioned a few in the slides, but it'd be good to sort of pass those on to each other. So it's been quite a long lecture this week, though will definitely not be this long in future, but I'm just trying to get you hitting the ground running and really up and on your tracking, because this is the most important thing. This is the basis of whatever we do. When we're accurately tracking food, we have a clear vision of actually what we're putting in our body. And you can have all the information in the world on what you need to put in your body, but if you actually really don't have an accurate picture, then it's absolutely useless. So we need to make sure we're accurate when weighing and measuring food and liquid we consume, accurate when weighing and measuring our body weight. So we could be accurate with our food, but actually not giving us a full picture if we're not accurate with our body weight measurements. You should set yourself up for success by preparing your environment. Part of this is having the necessary equipment for tracking. Make your life easier by saving meals. So it's going to save you a lot of time and make tracking much less of a chore. It doesn't mean stick rigidly to 2 meals, but have them ready. If you find you eat the same meals all the time, then great. If not, then not so great, but it's certainly a tool you can use. And make your life easier by finding a balance in your food choices.